Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. I am with Professor Rajeev Srinivasan. Rajeev, as you well know, has been a part of our hangouts. He talked about Kerala and he also talked about Jet Airways. He is a visiting faculty at IIM Bangalore. Rajeev, you can describe what you do at IIM Bangalore once I yield the floor to you. But first off, welcome to PGurus channel.
Thank you very much, Sri. Great to be here, and I love this program, and I love the way we have a good interaction. Not only, I appreciate the way you've been doing these chats, because there's a lot of breadth and a lot of depth as well. So thank you for the opportunity to be here. And what I do at IIM Bangalore is my area of specialization is strategy and specifically innovation. So I teach a course on innovation. And I also teach a workshop on design thinking. So these are the programs that I've been teaching there for quite a few years. So I spend maybe about 3-4 months out of the year in Bangalore and, impose myself on a bunch of MBA students. IIM has both the traditional 2-year MBA as well as they have these 1-year programs. And also they have public management programs. So I have students from all of these programs, plus they have a cohort that's part-time. They work during the week and come and study on Friday, Saturday. So there's a variety of people. So it's quite an interesting and exciting place to be, especially because there's a great deal of entrepreneurial work being done there. There is the N.S. Raghavan Center for Entrepreneurship, which you might be aware of. It's great stuff as well.
Yes, I've had the opportunity of giving a couple of lectures at IIM Bangalore, and I have been really, really pleased with the interaction that I've enjoyed there. So today's topic, viewers, is about the foreign policy of the current government and how much of an impact it has had or it is going to have in the upcoming elections. And I would like to start viewers by suggesting that they read an article by Rajeev in Swaraja magazine. We'll try to put the link for you in this video so you can read a little bit more about what he says there. But today we'll probably touch upon some of those things in that article and beyond that, because I have some observations too. So the first thing that viewers need to know about is Dhritarashtra Alinganam. Go back to your Mahabharata and figure out what that is. And because that is an essential part of this debate. So, Rajeev, why did you choose that phrase?
Well, as you know, Dhritarashtra Alinganam is a combination of stealth and power, right? If you look at what happened in the Mahabharata, the blind king Dhritarashtra pretended at one point to want to hug Bhima very closely to himself. Now, Bhima and his advisors knew that this is probably a somewhat dangerous thing. So instead of Bhima moving into an embrace, they moved a metal effigy of Bhima. And sure enough, Dhritarashtra embraced it and crushed it to bits, right? So that was the intent. So in a way, I use this as a metaphor for a mechanism whereby someone gets into a relationship promising a lot, and then very rapidly you find out that you got a lot more than you bargained for. And this is one of the examples of this is what happened to Sri Lanka with Hambantota, the harbor, right? Where the Chinese came in and it sounded wonderful. We'll build this harbor for you, blah, blah, blah. But soon enough, it turned into a debt trap. And finally, the Sri Lankans had to lease Hambantota for 99 years, the Chinese. So in effect, you started off with a particular intent and everything looked hunky-dory, but then it turned out to be a major curse for you down the road. That's the metaphor that I was using.
and it looks like a similar thing is played out in Pakistan, because for the CPEC, Pakistan is under a load of debt to the Chinese, and it's just a matter of time before that starts unraveling. In fact, I'm hearing rumors and murmurs that Pakistan has sold Gilgit-Baltistan area to the Chinese for a certain amount of money. I don't know how true that is. One of the things that people say to buttress that point is that, look, there are, neighborhoods coming up in Gilgit, which is like an enclave inside which there are only Chinese signs. No, none of the natives can go inside. All the jobs that are being created there are for drivers, for menial labor, and less than that. That is the Gilgit Baltistan population's perception of how the Chinese are helping them there. So now,
Right.
the topic, I guess, is back to what Modi's performance has been in the Foreign Affairs Department. Now, do you think that other than the national security issues, where Modi asserted India's right to retaliate for some of the things that was done by terrorists on Indian soil, where do you see the Indian public really talking about foreign policy and foreign achievements of Modi? I mean, in US it is front and center, but
Right.
how do you see it playing out in India?
Well, I had a chat on Malayalam TV with a former ambassador on his foreign affairs program, and he said something along the same lines. He said, in India, people win or lose based on bread and butter issues, and foreign affairs is kind of in the background. And I think there is a certain element of truth to that. However, I would say that there are a number of things that happened here that are because of foreign affairs that people can recognize. As an example, the Abhinandan effect, right? Because my belief is that the Pakistanis had a completely different plan for Abhinandan. He was a prize catch, right? And they were going to bargain like mad to get him released. So all kinds of things they were going to put on the table. But in fact, what happened was that they were forced to release him within a day or so with absolutely no preconditions attached so far as we could tell. And that's because I believe a number of friends of India, you might call them, or at least people who are not badly disposed towards India, such as the US, and probably Saudi Arabia, because Mohammed bin Salman was around that time in India and in Pakistan also, and even the UAE. Incidentally, just today, this is April 4th, we're having this discussion. Today, the UAE has awarded Prime Minister Modi their highest civilian award, which they had previously awarded to Putin and Bush and people like that. So this is a big deal, because what they're saying in effect is that there is a strong convergence of at least commercial interests between Arab countries and India, right? And this is new, because always it's been the case that there is the Organization of Islamic Countries, and they could be depended upon to support Pakistan to the hilt all the time in any circumstance. But recently, during the entire Pulwama and after effects, there was an OIC conference in, I think it was in Abu Dhabi, and in fact, Pakistan boycotted it because India, and specifically the Minister for External Affairs, Sushma Swaraj ji, was the chief guest there. So now we're seeing a significant turnaround in the way Pakistan is being viewed by the Middle East. Now, what this suggests is that people are getting fed up with Pakistan and their fomenting of terrorism, because all these guys are worried about, if I let in a lot of Pakistanis into my country, etc., what are the negative effects? So this, I would say, today's award, was a bit of a surprise to me, but I'm seeing this as sort of the culmination of a tremendous effort by the Modi government, which has resulted in, for example, the extradition of Christian Michel, the guy of Augusta Westland fame, and several others, Talwar, arms dealers, and so forth. These people were using Dubai essentially as a bolt hole, where they could just escape and be immune to being dragged back by India, but they're being extradited and brought back. A little bit like similar things are happening in Britain as well. Britain is known to be an excellent place for fugitives because their laws are quite helpful to them. Even people like Pinochet from Chile, they were hanging out in Britain. Now you're finding that Malia is, in trouble, and so is Nirav Modi. Now, none of this would have happened in the earlier regime, where our relationships with the UAE or the UK, etc., were not of a powerful nation. We were a supplicating nation, right? So I would say right there is a significant impact of Modi's foreign affairs capabilities on things that are happening in India. Now, whether this will translate into votes directly, I don't know, because people may not put two and two together and say, okay, it's because of Modi that Vijay Mallya is forced to cough up billions of rupees, etc. But it's a second order effect, definitely.
UAE has much reason to worry because people say that for every citizen of UAE, there are 7 foreigners that live on that kingdom. And I'm sure some similar numbers will be there for Kuwait and Saudi Arabia and so on and so forth. So there is a real danger that they might get overrun by, interests inimical to them. There is also one other little piece of information that came by last week, and I don't know if you want to touch upon that, and that was the ICIJ, the International Court for something.
Justice.
J is justice. ICIJ acquitted Kulbhushan Yadav's hanging order. I think, I'm not 100% sure of that. I read it. It just kind of came and went. I don't know if that has been ruled or not. Do you have any update on that one?
No, I have not been following that. I mean, I also remember there was a little bit of news last week, but I don't know exactly what happened because there were some strange things that happened in the ICIJ because, for example, the person who is prosecuting him from the Pakistani side was a Pakistani lawyer whom UPA had earlier preferred for some of their lawsuits in ICIJ. So I don't know. I have not followed that.
This is the Lithians ecosystem for you, Rajeev.
Yes.
There are people, they just, it's like a coat, they'll wear a BJP coat tomorrow, they'll wear a Congress coat, whatever it takes to further their own interests, I guess. But now let's move on to the other big neighbor of India, China. How do you think Modi's engagement with China, and also remember that there are 2 countries that are also affected in this other than China. One is Nepal and the other is Bhutan. How do you see that entire chemistry play out?
Not very effectively from our perspective, I would say, because I was just reading some interesting information from a gentleman named I've forgotten his name, something, but he is a retired Indian Army colonel, I believe, and he is an expert at reading satellite imagery, okay? And he posts under the name Raj 47, very, very interesting fellow. So he was saying that the Chinese have really built up Doklam in the last few months. They have built all kinds of things, fuel dumps, helipads, etc. So even though we pushed back fairly effectively against them a year ago, the Chinese have not been sitting on their laurels. They have been continuing their usual thing about, creating facts on the ground, which is what they are really good at. So I think there will be another Doklam episode, and I think this time India will not be able to get away with pushing them back so easily. So that's also terrible for Bhutan because it's Bhutan's land that we're talking about. As far as Nepal is concerned, ever since I've had the feeling long ago that the murder of the king Birendra and his family, a brutal murder, was actually a Chinese plot, in my opinion. I have no way of proving it. But what I felt was that at the end of that, when the dust settled, you would have a Chinese colony, or at least significant Chinese influence on Nepal. And that's exactly what happened. I actually wrote a piece long ago saying, Nepal, the next Tibet, around 2004 or whenever this whole thing happened. And that's exactly what's taken place. Not only have the Chinese and their friends infiltrated, incidentally, there's a whole lot of evangelism as well as conversion to Islam going on. So what used to be the world's only Hindu kingdom, i.e. Nepal, has now become quite inimical to Hinduism and quite inimical to Indian interests. The latest example was that they decided to go with Chinese standards for their railways rather than global standards. So they're getting into that Dhritarashtra Alinganam again, as we had mentioned before. I think in general, a lot of people, politicians in many countries find it difficult to say no when there is allegedly free money coming in. Of course, there's no such thing as free money. There's no such thing as free lunch. There are strings attached. But what they count on is by the time the strings are evident, they would have moved on, right? So yeah, we've not done that great with Nepal and with Bhutan, nor have we done so great with Sri Lanka or the Maldives, right? Maldives, at least after the I forgot his name, Gayoom, I think, was overthrown, Chinese influence is diminished. But Sri Lanka continues to be in that debt trap, and so does, to a significant extent, the other neighbor, Myanmar, and maybe Cambodia, which has significant cultural ties to us. So this whole region, people have talked, Brahmachalani and others have talked about this string of pearls choking India, and that's something that has continued apace, even with all this hullabaloo about Wuhan, the Wuhan spirit and so forth. That's just nonsense. I think there was no spirit. The Chinese are not known to give up anything for nothing, right? And why would they? For example, in the instance of Masood Azhar, they simply refuse to turn that guy into an internationally wanted terrorist. They just refuse because of two reasons. One is their question is, what do we gain by giving you this small, they call it a small thing. And they're essentially saying, you have to give us a big thing in return for that, right? And the second is that there's no pain to them. This is something that has no cost to them. The big thing they want is for India to become a part of the BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative. I'm startled and astonished that nobody has pointed out the fact that if you look at any BRI map, official Chinese map, Calcutta or Kolkata is part of it, right? Officially, according to China, this is news to me, and I'm sure it's news to most Indian people as well as politicians that Kolkata is part of BRI because India has steadfastly said no, we will not join BRI, and that's one issue where China is never going to give us a break. The other issue, of course, is that China sees us as, along with Japan, the only two countries that are standing in their way of total hegemony, and they have also internalized a view of India as a bunch of useful idiots, because that's what they were able to get, Indian politicians to be in the early days, and they continue to have that image of India. They have contempt for us. So unless there is some pain applied to them, they're going to continue to, keep us
Well,
down.
if pain were to be applied, wouldn't now be a good time because US has not, taken off their tariffs. China is really hurting badly right now, and they were hoping that somehow they can walk into a talk Trump into an agreement, and Trump is holding his ground. And now, as he loses some other battles, it becomes all the more important for Trump to look strong against China. So he's forced to harden his position, and so the net loser is China, and India is one of its biggest trading partners. So if India were to inflict pain in China, well, if that becomes a policy, now would be a really good time.
I think so, because I think our trade deficit with them is something like $60 billion. It's huge, and it's
Yes.
increasing year by year. And if you look at a breakdown of that 60 billion, a lot of it is not, what they call plastic, what is it? Plastic dog shit from Hong Kong. That was from the movie Top Gun. But it's not crap. It's telecom equipment.
Yes.
Just telecom equipment, I read the numbers, went from 4.5 billion to 6.3 billion in 2017 to 2018. This is a very bad deal because I assume that means we are buying tons of Huawei gear and ZTE gear, and that suggests that our 5G effort will end up being dominated by Huawei. So I think we really need to put our foot down and say no Huawei, no ZTE. Certainly that's something that can be done. And as you said, we really could start trying to find alternatives because see, China has to find markets. They produce all this stuff. Somebody's got to buy it. And I read something very, very interesting the other day. They are now weaponizing containers. That is, they've invented a missile, a ballistic missile that can be concealed inside a regular shipping container. And I was thinking, this is the best news in terms of non-tariff barriers, right? Because what it suggests is that you could say, look, every Chinese container has to be physically and manually inspected. You know, this would put Chinese exports on a thorough cliff. They'll fall off a cliff. I mean, you heard it here first, but I'm pretty sure in the US is going to start making some noises about this, that we got to inspect. I'm sorry, we're worried about your containers and having, not rubber dog shit, but cruise missiles, okay, or ballistic missiles. But in that, I'm joking a bit, of course. But I think we need to find both tariff and non-tariff barriers, right? Tariff barriers, because I'm sure there are a lot of things that are being dumped. There are some things that are being dumped on India which we like. For example, solar panels. The Chinese are overproducing like mad. The price of solar panels has collapsed by 80%. And we have a very ambitious program for solar energy. So yeah, those things we can bring in. But there are many other things we can say, no, sorry, you're dumping and here are the countervailing duties. Or we can say, by the way, here are some new non-tariff barriers. You have to have everything you export into India labeled in all 22 national languages, right? That would be a great non-tariff barrier. People have done these things before, and we should.
An interesting aside on that, they mistyped the text on Patel statue in one or two languages. So
okay. Well, if we make those mistakes,
yes,
well, the Chinese will definitely make it, and that's an excellent reason to say, sorry, this consignment is not acceptable. Please send it back.
Yes.
So yeah, but China, I think there is no way. I don't see any immediate way in which we can expect anything positive from them. So there's one more bit of information from last week that you may have heard of, which is that Australia and India are holding their biggest joint naval exercise ever, AUS Index 2019. In the earlier days of the Quad, Australia had been kind of reluctant to participate because they're worried about, what will China think? And this pissed off India. And so India has been holding Australia at a bit of an arm's length. But now, I think that's beginning to happen. And talking about paying to China, Quad is the, non-trade oriented, but military oriented thing that will cause them some pain. So I'm happy that we're doing something along those lines as well.
Now, I guess we have covered just about all the different countries, and takeaway from this, a net positive, I think, for Modi from his 5-year term. I think India has been seen as a more, somebody who has to be noticed and, counted. But still, that membership in UN Security Council is open. That has not been given yet. And beyond that, I guess people will probably say, look back at this 5-year term and say, India didn't do too badly. Would you agree?
I think so. And if I may, I'd like to spend a minute on the ASAT. The ASAT launch. The response was startling. Nobody had a fit. Nobody threw a fit. In fact, even China didn't throw a fit. What does it suggest? They have accepted that you cannot keep India out, like they did to India after the nuclear test. India could have been a founding member of the nuclear club because the Americans had offered to India before the 1962 India-China war the opportunity to test our nukes, and of course our first prime minister said no, and that's why we have continued to be, outside the NPT and the nuclear supplier group, waiting to be allowed in. But here in the ASAT, we're pretty much already in, and that's a very powerful story. That people are recognizing that you cannot keep India out anymore.
You're absolutely right. But to me, the follow-up, which was the placement of 28 satellites in 3 different orbits, that is a big deal because that suddenly opens up a new money-making opportunity for an Indian organization, ISRO. I'm 100% sure that their cost to launch any country's satellite in the space is
Yeah.
probably less than, significantly less than what America or others charge today.
It has been. However, some of these efforts by private operators in the US, and I forget their names, Virgin
SpaceX?
and yeah, SpaceX, they're now using mechanisms to reuse their rockets. So that is something that will eventually make it possible for them to have prices that are close to what ISRO and Antrix and so forth are able to offer. So yeah, I mean, today we have two things. One is technical competence, and this is something that really needs to be emphasized. It's not science competence, but it's engineering competence, frugal engineering competence. And the fact that India was able to deliver Mangalyaan at the first attempt, and it was able to deliver the ASAT at the first attempt, because all the others have had multiple failures before they were able to get the proper results. So India is now developing a reputation for being very good at implementing stuff, right? So engineering prowess is something that's really helpful for us. But in the era of microsatellites, they're launching. People are launching hundreds and thousands of microsatellites. I think yeah, there is a fair amount of potential business for us. But that's been the case for a long time, and this is where that entire fiasco with the cryogenic engine, that Maldivian spy case, the fake spy case, which I'm pretty sure was created by deep state entities, put us back by 20 years. So we have lost 20 years of commercial opportunity in the launch business.
That's absolutely right. Unfortunately, we lost your video about 2 minutes ago, Rajiv. Uh,
Oh,
That's all
okay.
right. That's all right. The audio came through fine, and I hope
Okay.
our viewers will excuse us for some technical difficulties, because I wanted to finish this conversation on this point that yes, if the Modi government were to come back, I think India will only get stronger, and it's actually imperative that India be strong and not be pulled in different directions. That's what would happen if a coalition were to come to power. Thank you very much, Rajiv, and we will be back with more such engaging conversations.
Thank you very much, Sri. Good to talk to you.